All right, I will say good morning. Good morning. Begin by thanking all of our sponsors. To thank our our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Shvat. Mrs. Bracha Strimber for dedicating all the Shuman Drushos this month in memory of her husband, Avram ben Kalman Eliezer Halevi Zichron Livracha. To thank Ayala and Sarah Steinberg for dedicating all the Shuman Drushos this month in the Schutz of Rafush Lema for Shulamis Bas Susha. To thank our week of learning sponsors, Mark and Elsa Lossman in honor of the Archei Kala, and Emir Hashem is Rafush Lema for all the Cholim in our community. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, the Hashem Shav and Aliyah, the family of the Nechama, and all Chole Yisrael should have a complete and enduring refuah. With that, let us begin. We have a great daf ahead of us today, a lot of fascinating ideas. Today's daf is Yud Dalet 14. We are picking up, let's actually pick up at the Gemara again on Yud Gimel Amud Beis, right, 13b. We actually ended off a couple of lines later, but let's just pick up over here again just to restart our conversation. So here we go. Says the Gemara, Boy Rava. So we'll say this is the Shaila of Rava, which is actually this Shaila is actually going to take us, Emir Hashem, through a good part of our daf today. So Boy Rava. Amar Harini Nazir la'echad ve'es la'echad. Sorry. Amar Harini Nazir la'achar esrim yom. So a person says, well, in case we started yesterday, a person says, I'm going to be a Nazir after 20 days. Okay, after 20 days. Ume'achshav me'ayom. But I'm starting another Neder Nazirus for 100 days, starting now. Now, me'achshav literally means from now. From now doesn't literally have to mean that I'm starting it now, but it means from now, as opposed to his first Neder, which is timed to begin 20 days from now. The 100-day Nazirus has the ability to start now. So what's Rava Shaila? So the Gemara says, Mahu, what do we do in this case? Kevan dahalin mea be'esum lo shleimin, lo chaylin. I will say, do we say that on one hand, since you can't fit in 100 days into 20 days, right? So let me say again, there's obviously no way to complete the Neder Nazirus within 20 days, 100 days and 20 days, lo chaylin. So maybe what we say is like this: don't start the 100-day Nazirus now. Wait 20 days, begin the 30-day Nazirus, and then what? And then when that's finished, begin the 100. So essentially, when will you be finished with everything? 150 days from now. Right? From the time that you made the neder, you'll be finished 150 days from now. Oh, Dilma, the other possibility is, Kevan de Isle Gidel Ser Lebasof Chaylin. Now I will say, we're going to see maybe what we can say is like this: observe 20 days now. So let's start the 100-day Neder Nazirus now. Observe 20 days now. Then what? Pause it. Observe the 30-day duration of the Neder Nazirus. And then when you finish that, do what? Continue the other 80 of the 100-day term. Now, I will say, remember, up until yesterday's daf, we never heard about this concept of starting, pausing, and resuming Neder Nazirus. Now, I will say, I want to be clear, that doesn't apply in any case you want. Like, it can't be the pshat that I'm a Nazir, somebody brought me such a beautiful bottle of wine on Erev Shabbos. I'll be like, I'm going to hit the pause button on this, right? Just for the weekend, take the weekend off, right? And then I'll resume. So obviously it doesn't work. The only time that you could go ahead and pause and resume is when you're interrupting with other Nidre Nazirus. You have concurrent Nazirus. So I'll say, this is the Shaila. So what do? So two possibilities: either just wait 20 days, start the Neder Nazirus, and then after that Neder Nazirus is done, begin your 100-day. Or possibility two is observe 20 days, then the Neder Nazirus, do 30, and then observe the remaining 80 afterwards. Viti Baile, I don't understand, why is it only a question by a 100-day Nazirus? I could ask the same question of Tibaile Nazirus Mu'etes. I was about to say, you can ask the same Shaila like this. Let's say I said I'm going to be a Nazir in 20 days from now. And then what? And then I took on another Neder Nazirus. Right? So in other words, Harini Nazir la'achar esrim yom, v'harini Nazir. Like we saw in the Mishnah. So I will say it's the same Shiloh. What should I do? Should I begin the first Neder Nazirus now, observe 20 days, then interrupt for the second term, right? And then after that's over, observe the remaining 10 days of the first term? Or do I say, no, since I can't get 30 days into 20, therefore what? just wait with the first one, observe the one that's going to start after 20 days from now. Once that's finished, then observe the second 30. To which the Gemara says, you're right. In reality, we're asking both of those questions. They're both actually fundamentally the same question. So here we go. Imtim salomar nezirus mu'etes kevan dasar yomin hu diyasrin lo salikle halein asara. So we'll say, so now listen to this. See, here's the difference. We're going to see, I will say, that one of the principles that the Gemara is going to operate with, although it has not been stated explicitly, is like this. When are we comfortable allowing you to start, pause, and resume Nazirus? When the leftover part is enough allow for hair growth. Now I will say, in halacha, what's the minimum amount that's called significant for hair growth? 30 days. 30 days. So the Gemara says like this. The truth is, in the 30-day case, so watch this. If I say, Hareini Nazir la'achar esrim yom, that's the neder I'm making. I'm going to become a Nazir after 20 days. And then I say afterwards, Hareini Nazir. So I'll say, what have I just done? With those two statements, what have I just done? 2 Nidre Nazirs for how long? 60 days, right? 30 days each, 60 days total. So I understand in a case of starting with 20, right? So let's play this out. So if I start, which essentially is the second Neder Naziris first, if I start the second Neder Naziris first, chaperine on those 20 days, the problem is now I do 20, pause, the other 30. What do I have left on the first one? 10. 10 is not enough for significant hair growth. In other words, 10 is not 30. So therefore, again, I understand maybe in that case, where all I could do is what? Essentially, wait to 20, begin the Neder Nazirus. When that's over, then do the second Neder Nazirus. However, Vadai, Nazir Mea Yom, Kevan de Isle Tamni Yomin Libasof, Solikle. Now let's say, but in the case of 100-day Nazirus, where what? Like we said before, if I begin the 100-day Nazirus when? Now. Observe 20 days of that 100. Pause, then observe we'll call it, quote unquote, the first Neder Nazirus for 30 days. Then when that's over, what? Right? Observe the other 80. Okay, 80 is significant. So I do have enough of a significant Nazirus on the back end of all of this that maybe should allow me to go ahead and start, pause, and resume. Oh, no. Or maybe not. Maybe the halacha is about saying that Nazirus is only observed when it's observed in a contiguous fashion. Imtim salam chayli, and I will say if at the end of the day, halacha l'mais in the case of the 100-day Nazirus, if you hold that you can begin the first 20 now, then pause it, observe the first 30, then go ahead and observe the remaining 80 on the first Neder Nazirus. What about the following? Amar hareini nazir la'achar chaf yom. If I say I'm going to become a Nazir after 20 days, ume achshav Nazir olam. Wow, that's a good one. I'll say, watch this. I say I'm going to become a Nazir in 20 days from now. Ume achshav, and from now I'm taking upon myself a neder of a Nazir olam. We'll say, remember again, what's a Nazir olam? Exactly what it sounds like, a permanent Nazir. So what do I do with this? Mahu, michayli alei olo. So I will say, see, what's the fundamental shaila? Fundamental shaila is I'm trying to figure out what can I do with the 20 days between now, the time of articulation, and the chalos and the beginning of the 30-day Neder Naziros. That's really my shaila. Can I use it for something or not? Imtim talomar hacha. In the case of Nazir Olam, Kevan the Afshar Liishtaluye. So this is very interesting. Since I could go ahead and technically, right, I could have Sheila. In other words, also you could do Atara with such a neder. Chayli. Maybe the Nazirus Olam could start right now. On the flip side, Amar Hareini Nazir Shimshon. I will say, what about if I say I'm going to be a Nazir Shimshon? I will say, now Nazir Shimshon has no revocation. No revocation at all. There's no she'ilah on a Nazir Shimshon. So what if I say, Hareini Nazir Shimshon, li'achar esrim yom, or me'achshav Nazir stam? So I'll say, now we're reversing it. I say in 20 days from now, I'm going to become a Nazir Shimshon. But now, I should become a regular Nazir. We'll say, what's the problem I have? I only have 20 days to fulfill a 30-day neder nazirus. So what do I do in a case like this? Mao, haka lo efshar lishtaluye. So we'll say in this case, there's no hatara b'hafar nazir shimshon. So michayla. Ultimately, again, does the stam nazirus, can it be chal now? Or no, or not? So we'll say Amar. Okay, so we're throwing out a bunch of questions. Amar. We'll say, listen to this. Amar kimosha b'shiva ba'adar mai. And we'll say, listen to this. If I say, I should be like Moshe on the 7th of Adar. Then I will say, what does that mean, like Moshe on the 7th of Adar? What's the 7th of Adar? Zayin Adar is Moshe Rabbeinu's yahrzeit, his birthday and his yahrzeit. So we'll say, now watch this. What if I make a statement, I should be like Moshe on the 7th of Adar? And I will say, now this is actually interesting. Take a quick look at Rashi. Rashi is 2, 4, 6, 8 lines up from the bottom. Amarini ki Moshe b'shiva ba'adar, demashma ki Moshe sheniftar b'shiva ba'adar, v'shuv lo shasa yayin. Now I will say, here's what's interesting. According to Rashi, what it means is like this. Moshe on the 7th of Adar, bepashtos, stopped drinking wine. Right? He stopped, which makes sense, right? So it should be like Moshe on the 7th of Adar. Moshe stopped drinking wine. So we'll say, so the Rosh is very unsatisfied with that interpretation. The Rosh will say, take a look at the Rosh. The Rosh is on the bottom left-hand column. Last line. Amar ki Moshe b'sheva ba'adar mahu, mir minan dahavi kabbalas nazirus. Is that called a Kabbalah of a Nazirus? Why? The mistama biyom sheniftar Moshe Rabbeinu. If the Rosh goes on to the next page, Rabu nozrim Nazirus machmas tsar. The Rosh said, this is incredible. The Rosh says, no. The day that Moshe died, people were obviously distressed. It's quite possible and probable that what was their response to the distress? They took on Nidre Nazirus. Interesting. They took on Nidre Nazirus. Right? So if a person says, I am like Moshe on the 7th of Adar, so I will say, what is the impact of that statement? So I will say, says the Shai, is that called a Neder Nazirus? And I will say, now, if you just reflect on that statement, Hareini ki Moshe b'shiva ba'adar, I will say, what a profound aspirational statement. I want to be like Moshe on the 7th of Adar. I will say, what a loaded statement. What does it mean to be like Moshe on the 7th of Adar? I will say, you know what it meant? Moshe Rabbeinu on the 7th of Adar, Moshe Rabbeinu led a complete life. He led a complete life. When a person says, I want to be like Moshe, right? Some people say, I want to be like Mike, right? But so empty, especially after you watch those documentaries, right? So empty, right? I will say, so ultimately, again, Harini ki Moshe, I want to be like Moshe. I want to be a person who lives a complete life. I want to be like Moshe and lives a complete life. I will say it's not just that, but remember again, the pasuk, actually in the brachas before the Tochacha says, Baruch ata b'voecha u'b'tzeisecha. Right? The Baruch ata b'tzeisecha. You should be blessed in your going out, or I should say in your coming in and in your going out. And Rashi says, what does that mean to be blessed in your coming in and you're going out? So Rashi HaKodesh says, Kishem shebi'ascha la'olam below chet, kach yitzi'ascha min ha'olam below chet. The same way you came into this world without sin, you should leave this world without sin. So we'll say, so the obvious shaila is, no one leaves this world without sin. I take that back. There is a way to leave this world without sin, which is how? To leave this world is about tshuva. Right? If I do proper tshuva for all of my chatoim, then literally I leave the world without sin. But the truth is, the word chet, although we often define it as sin, the etymology, the Maharal writes, the etymology of chet is a void, is an absence. That, the beautiful part is when a child comes into this world, if you ask that baby, no, Tyreid, beautiful Jew, right? What are you missing? Baby's going to say, if you could plug in, right? The baby's going to say, nothing. I have a mother that's holding me, right? I have what to eat. I have a family. Nothing. I'm missing nothing. Let's see, what the incredible part is, because the baby feels that sense of shleimus. The goal in life is that we come into this world with a sense of completion. We should leave this world with a sense of completion. Let's say, how many of us walk through life and there's a void inside of me. It's a void. There's a hole. There's an emptiness. And the truth is, it's there for all of us. What many of us do is we simply suppress it and we fill it with other things, right? So I try to mask it. The best thing that people try to mask it with is gashmius, is materialism, right? Because that's the easiest, because it's a quick fix. Because material stuff is fun and it's nice and it's enjoyable. And Hakadosh Baruch Hu made it, it's beautiful, and it gives me like a little bit of like a high in that moment to mask the void. But the void is there, and in those moments when you're alone with yourself, and in those moments of quiet contemplation of his boninus and his bodidus, I feel it inside of me. I feel it. And over the years, I feel it getting bigger and bigger. And the whole yesod in life is, don't mask it. Fill it with something good. Fill it with something meaningful. Fill it with kedusha. A person says, the Gemara is asking, a person says, Harini kimoshe b'shiva ba'adar. The Gemara is asking, is that Nazirus? Okay, we're going to see. We don't know if it's Nazirus or not. One thing I know is, what a way to walk around life. That's a mantra. Harini kimoshe b'shiva ba'adar. You know what I want my life to be like? I just want to be like Moshe Rabbeinu on the 7th of Adar. I just want to know that by the time my journey is over, I have lived a good, meaningful, and complete life. That I didn't spend my life chasing all the wrong things. I didn't spend my life focusing on all the wrong things. Moshe Rabbeinu left this world with a sense of shleimus, and I want to leave this world with the same feeling. Incredible Gemara. And it's only Monday. Incredible. So let's go right there. So we'll say, the Gemara says, okay, you just threw out a whole bunch of questions. So the Gemara says, I'm going to answer one of them. Now we'll say, so lucky for us, the one answer the Gemara is going to answer, the one question the Gemara is going to answer is actually the one posed by Rava on Yud Gimel Lamed Beis on 13b. And what did Rava say? Pashat minei kamaisa, hareini nazir la'achar esrim yom me'achshav me'yom. All right, so we'll say that's why we're going full circle. What's full circle? I'm a Nazir in 20 days from now. So right, I'm a Nazir in 20 days from now, and from now for 100 days. So we'll say, what was our shaila? Our shaila was, what do you do in that case? Do you go ahead and simply wait 20 days, begin the 30-day duration, and then what? And then 100 days, or possibility two, do 20 of the 100-day Nazirus, hit the pause button, then do 30 days of your other Nazirus, and then what? Resume the 80. So the Gemara answers, what do you do? So the Gemara says, Mona Esrim, you could start the 100-day Nazirus now, right now, from the moment of articulation, count 20 days from that 100-day one. The Achar Kach Mona Shloshim, then go ahead and do your other Nazirus for 30 days. The Achar Kach Mona Shmonim, and then finish up your remaining 80, Kadei Lahashlim Nazirus Rishona, in order ultimately, again, to finish up your original Neder Nazirus. So I will say, so halacha l'maisa, so we'll say, here we go. So now I'm allowed to go ahead and, begin the 100-day Nazirus. Now, begin my first 20, hit the pause button, observe the 30, and then again, after the 30 is finished, ultimately, go ahead and resume the remaining 80. Good. So we'll say, that is indeed the halacha. So I will say, I'll quote this to you again. The Rambam quotes this halacha, and he says, without going through the whole case, he says, actually, we'll save the Rambam for later. Let's finish up the daf first, because it's a longer Rambam. So we'll say, by the way, I'll just point out to you, why is it that we allow the Nazir to do this? So we'll say, the simplest answer, right? The simplest approach in this case is what? Right? So again, just play out the case. It's Tu B'Shvat. I say, first of all, again, Alichtka Tu B'Shvat, everyone, Helig Tu B'Shvat. Right? So I'll say, Tu B'Shvat, not for now, but like one of the most underrated, unappreciated Yamim Tovim in Gullus, right? Because the truth is, what is Tu B'Shvat known for in Gullus? Right? Dental emergencies. There's dental emergencies. Why? I will say because it is Minhag Yisrael to chip a tooth on Boxer. I'm almost positive I got this same one last year. I'm almost positive it's the same one. It's the same bag. It's the same little paper bag with the dried fruit, so dried that manish. Okay. Any event, Tu B'Shvat is very holy. We'll talk about it later. In any event, the Gemara said like this. So let's just play this out. Let's just clarify the case, right? It's Tu B'Shvat. I am saying that I'm going to be a Nazir in 20 days from now. Okay? What's the duration of that Nazirus? 30 days. Okay? Then I also say, Harini Nazir I'm going to be a Nazir now for 100 days. So I will say, the simplest way to deal with this is how? Simplest way? Just wait 20 days, begin your Neder Nazirus, be a Nazir for 30 days, then be a Nazir for 100 days after that, and 170 days from now, you're done. You're done. They'll say, why we do, but now the halacha actually says that no, what can you do? Now, begin 20 days of your 100-day Nazirus, then what? Pause it, observe the 30-day Nazirus, and then you can reserve the remaining 80-day Nazirus. So we'll say, so why do we do that? Why does the halacha allow for that? So I think there's two answers. Number one, from a halachic perspective, I will say, we've seen already, halacha is very concerned with Nazirus in general. Very concerned with it. It is in our best interest that the person get these Nidre Nazirus over with as quickly as possible. We don't want it hanging out there, because also remember again in general, with the Neder Nazirus, this is a long duration as it is. We haven't even spoken about if what? The guy becomes tamei, something happens, right? There's so many different things. So the halacha has a vested interest in getting this done. There's also a profound piece of hashkafa in this, which is that if something needs to get done, don't wait. Don't wait. When does a Jew ever say, I'm going to accomplish something in 20 days from now? What is that? What is that? You're going to accomplish something? They will say, do you know, if you say you're going to accomplish something, do you know when that mission begins? The moment you finish articulating what it is you need to accomplish, get to work. There's no such thing, let me say it differently. Is there such thing as long-term plans? Absolutely, absolutely. But you know what long-term plans mean? Long-term plans refers to things that are going to take time to accomplish. Long-term plans don't refer to things that you're going to be long-term until you start them. Because anything that you delay the start of, we all know this, more often than not, it just doesn't happen. So the halacha says you need to be a Nazir, get started. Get started. 100-day Naziris, we'd rather you break up that 100-day Naziris, do 20 days now, interrupt it with another 30-day Naziris, and then 80 days on the back end. Then go ahead and wait 20 days and do absolutely nothing. So incredible. Good. Says go back. There's such good Gemara. Let's go back to Harini Nazir. So fine. Good. Nitma b'mei b'no. So this is so good. Listen to this, I will say. This is actually going back to our previous case. Previous Mishnah. We'll say, look at Rashi for just a moment. Rashi is 7 lines from the bottom. Nitma b'mei b'no. Hai dama harini Nazir kisheheli ben Nazir. So I will say this is yesterday's Mishnah. A guy says, I'm going to be a Nazir when I have a son, kisheheli ben, when I have a son, and Nazir. And I'm also going to be a Nazir. Well, this is yesterday's case. So what happens? We look at that now is that essentially, so he has a Neder Nazirus that's going to take effect when his son is born, but he has another Neder Nazirus that's going to take effect when? It could take effect now. So he begins that second Neder Nazirus now, and then what happens? When his son is born, it pauses the current Neder Nazirus, he observes the Nazirus for his son, and then when that's over, he resumes his previous Nazir. That was yesterday's daf. So watch this, incredible. So Nitma b'mei b'no, both say, let's say he becomes Tamei. So we'll say, just to play this out, it's Tu B'Shvat. Guys, Reuven says, I'm going to become a Nazir when my son is born. And Harini Nazir. And he takes upon himself another Neder Nazirus. So what does he do? He begins the regular Neder Nazirus now. And then what happens, Rabbi say, in 5 days, on the 20th of Shvat, Mazel Tov, his wife has a son. He now begins to observe the period of Neder Nazirus for his son. Now we'll say, now what happens? That begins on the 20th of Shvat. On the 25th of Shvat, he now becomes Tamei. So I'll say, what's the shaila? Does he lose everything or just the period of Nazirus observed for his son? See, he became Tamei in the middle of his son's Nazirus, but in the midst of the paused other Nazirus. So when you become Tamei in the middle of that, do you just lose the period of Nazirus in which you are currently observing, or do you lose everything? Such a good shaila, to which the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan Amar Soser. Rabbi Yochanan says, you lose everything. Reish Lakish says, Eino Soser. No, we'll say Eino Soser means you only lose the period of the son. You do not lose the paused period of Nazirus. To which the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan Amar Soser, Chad Nazir Sarechti. Rabbi Yochanan says you lose everything because also the way we look at this halachically is one elongated period of Nazirus. Reish Lakish Amar Eino Soser, Nazirus Tidei L'chod, U'Dibrei L'chod. Reish Lakish says, no, you don't lose everything. Why? we look at the 2 periods of Nazirus as what Rabbi saying is what? 2 independent things, which is really incredible. In other words, when that first Neder Nazirus is paused, it's paused. It's almost as if like you're not observing it now. And therefore, Allah when you become Tameh during the Nazirus for your son, you lose the son's Nazirus, but you don't lose your other Nazirus. Incredible. So we'll say, that's Machlokes Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish. Next case, Nitma b'mei tzara. So we'll say this is a similar case. We'll say we are going to see something very interesting, and we haven't gotten to this yet. But Allah if you take a quick look, at the Rush is about 8 lines up from before it gets wide in the right-hand column. Nitma b'mei tzara. So Amar Harini Nazir Kuf Yom v'Hiskalimnos v'Nitztara Amrin on the Kaman Dimei Chiluto Einon Olin v'Gam Einon Sosrim. So we're going to see something very interesting. Later on, we'll see the sugya about what happens if a person gets tsaras while he's in Nazirus. So I'll say, here's the problem. Tsaras itself is tameh, but more than that, the purification process for tsaras, for the mitzvah, requires what? A full body shaving, including your hair. So we're going to discuss that Lamaisa, Saras does not go ahead and destroy, it doesn't obliterate the Neder Nazirus. What it does is, it pauses the Neder Nazirus. And essentially what you have to do is, you have to make up your time in the Neder Nazirus that you lost from the Saras. Again, we'll get more into that, it's a really fascinating case. So we'll say, same Shaila. What happens now if our Nazir becomes a Metzora, okay, fine, he's paused, and now he becomes Tameh during his Tsaras days, right? So we'll say it's effectively the same question as we just had before, right? So the first question was, the guy is observing an Ed Nazirus, paused it because the Nazirus for his son. He's now observing the Nazirus for the birth of his son. He becomes Tameh during that Nazirus. What does Tumah during the Nazirus for his son do with the paused Ned Nazirus? Rabbi Yochanan says, everything is obliterated. He's got to start all over again for everything. Reish Lakish says, no, it only obliterates the current Neder Nazirus in which he is currently observing, but it doesn't obliterate the paused Neder Nazirus. Guy becomes Tameh when he's a Mitzorah who's a Nazir. This guy's got a lot going on, by the way, right? So he's a Nazir who got Saras. Just next time you think you're having a bad day, I'm just saying, right? So as I see, he's a Nazir who got Saras and then became Tameh. So both say, so remember, just the progression is the tsaras pauses the Nazirus. So now when he becomes Tameh during his tsaras, what does that do to the Nazirus? Rabbi Yochanan Amar Soser. Rabbi Yochanan says ultimately again it destroys it, right? It obliterates the Nazirus. Reish Lakish Amar Eino Soser. Reish Lakish says no, it's paused. Because it's paused, ultimately again, it does not obliterate the Nazirus. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Soser Dahab Nazirus Kai. Rabbi Yochanan says that the Tumah during Saras goes ahead and obliterates the Neder Nazirus. Why? Because it will say, even though the Neder may be paused, he's still a Nazir, right? He's still in the midst of Nazirus. And becoming Tameh in the midst of Nazirus, ultimately again, obliterates the Nazirus. Reish Lakish Amar Eino Soser. Reish Lakish says ultimately again, it does not go ahead and demolish the Nazirus. Why? Tsaras l'chod u'Nazirus l'chod. Because I will say essentially, when he's in a state of tsaras, what we look at him is simply a Metzora and not a Nazir. And therefore, when he becomes Tameh as a Metzora, we do not look at that as a Nazir who has become Tameh. Incredible. Now, both say, obviously, it's the same, or it's 2 different cases, but it's the same principle. So the Gemara is going to ask, why do I need both machloksim of Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish? To which the Gemara says, you need both. I'll tell you why. Because if it would have just said the first case of where the Nazir becomes Tameh during his son's Neder Nazirus, Bahiyam Rabbi Yochanan Soser, Shem Nazirus Hachasi. In that case, Rabbi Yochanan says that ultimately Tumah will destroy everything because both Nidar and both periods of time are Nazirus. It's all one Nazirus. In other words, it's two different periods of Nazirus, but it's all called Nazirus. Avabaha, but in the case of the Nazir who becomes a Metzora, who then becomes Tameh, Eima Modli Reish Lakish. Perhaps Rabbi Yochanan would agree with Reish Lakish. The Nazir l'chod v'tzaras l'chod. The Nazir is going to be one thing, and tzaras is going to be a different thing. The Itmar Baha, and if it would have just said the second case, Pakam Reish Lakish, this second case is where Reish Lakish says that the Nazirus is paused because of the Tumah of Tzaras, or because of the Tumah during Tzaras. But perhaps in the first case, he would agree with Rabbi Yochanan. So both say therefore both cases are required. Now both say halacha l'mais, how do we paskin? So first of all, this is a fascinating case. So just to frame both cases, because they're really both the same. Case number one, I say, Hareini Nazir, I'm going to be a Nazir when my wife gives birth to a son. Okay? And then I also say another Hareini Nazir. So we'll say, what do I do in that case? Yesterday's Mishnah, what do I do in that case? What do I do? Begin my Neder Naziros. And then what happens? When my son is born, pause, observe the Neder Naziros for the son, and then when it's finished, what? Resume and finish it off. That's the case. What's the question? I became Tameh during the Neder Naziros for my son. So we'll say, what's the Shaila? Does that obliterate everything? So now effectively I have to start everything over? Or maybe it only obliterates the actual Neder Naziros in which I'm currently observing, which is the Neder Naziros for my son, but the days of my other Neder that I observed before the birth of my son are still there and intact. So Machlokes Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan says, so sir, everything is destroyed. Reish Lakish says, no, only the days of the Nazirs for the son. Rabbi said, we paskin Rabban Paskins like Rabbi Yochanan. Like Rabbi Yochanan, namely, everything is destroyed. Same thing, by the way, by the case of Tsaras, by the case of Tum and Tsaras, everything is lost. Rabbi say, I'll just point out to you something amazing. I was thinking about this, that if you think about it, it's a profound machlokis in hashkafa as well. I would say, when a person is doing something, and then I make myself tameh, Maisim b'chol yom, make myself tameh. Bad mistakes, bad decisions. I would say, you never wonder to yourself, when you make bad decisions, does that obliterate all of the good that I've done up until this point in time? Or maybe what I just lose is the moment in front of me. So it seems to be machlokes Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan says that when you're metame yourself, so sirakol. Sometimes the tumah that I generate, sometimes the bad decisions, the bad things I do, the averos I do, could be so profound that literally so sirakol, they could destroy everything. Reish Lakish says chas v'shalom. Chas v'shalom. You don't destroy everything. What do you destroy? What have I destroyed? I've destroyed the moment I'm in now. That's what I've destroyed. But the good I've done in the past, that is safe and intact. So we'll say, how do we paskin? So we saw that halacha l'maisa, we paskin like Rabbi Yochanan. Hashkafa l'maisa, we paskin like Reish Lakish. Pas like Reish Lakish. We'll say, no matter how badly I mess up in life, there is no such thing as destroying all of the good I've done until this point. No such thing for a Jew. Right? Baruch Hashem, we all make mistakes. And sometimes in life, I make some real doozies, some really, really bad mistakes. And it feels in those moments of terrible mistakes like I've divested myself of all of my Kedusha. Like I've lost everything. It literally feels, like Rabbi Yochanan says, so sir. It feels like I have demolished and obliterated every last shred of Kedusha in my entire being. But even though it feels that way, just know, hashkafa l'maisa, it's not true. It's not true. We make bad mistakes, and yes, when you make bad mistakes, I destroy the moment. But the good that I've accomplished and the good that I've accrued until this point, that is mine for all eternity. Nothing could take that away from me. And Abba said, the fact that that's safe, there and intact, Abba said, remember again, that's the foothold for tshuva. Because without that good of the past being safeguarded and intact, I would have no ability, no building blocks in Meretz Hashem to rebuild. So halacha l'maisa, like Rabbi Yochanan, hashkafa l'maisa, like Reish Lakish. Weiter. Nitma b'yom gidol seir. So we'll say another very interesting case. Let's say he becomes tameh on the day of gidol seir. Now we'll say, what's gidol seir? So take a look at the first wide line in the Rush. Nitma b'yom gidol seir. The Rush says, Kigon, stam nazir shenitztara, u'b'yom tarasa megalech. So we'll say a regular nazir who has become tameh. I'm sorry, who has saras, and therefore I will say, this is what we talked about before. As part of his purification process for his saras, what does he have to do? He has to cut his hair. Then bring his karbanos. I will say, so now he's in the middle of his neder naziris and he's cut his hair. So what's the halacha? Sarech limnos od lamed yom legidol ser. So I will say, we are going to see that halacha. It's very interesting. You're a nazir, you become a metzora in the middle of your nazirus. Now remember again, so the saras doesn't demolish your neder naziris, but what does it do? Your purification for your saras requires you to cut your hair. So now what are you going to have to do, say? You're going to have to observe another 30 days of your neder nazirus to allow for hair growth, because the minimum amount of time for hair growth is 30 days. So I need 30 days for new hair growth for the neder nazirus. That's the case. So the Gemara says, what happens if I become tameh on the day of Gidul Seir? So now effectively, what you have over here is going on is as follows. You have, by the way, there's another case like this, so I'll say, where, let's say you're a Nazir minding your own business. You know, I'll say people love to bully Nazirim. So what happens? So, right, the bullies come along, and what do they do to you? I'll say, what do? They cut your hair. They cut your hair. Nazir bullies, they're the worst. Let's say, so Lamaisa, they cut your hair. So we'll say, so now you're stuck. What do you have to do? It's incredible. What do you have to do? You have to observe, right? So they shave your head. They hold you down, shave your head. It's like Nazir hazing, right? They shave your head. They'll say, and now you have to observe another 30 days, the Rosh says. You have to observe another 30 days. So I will say, so something very interesting happens, which is, I have actually finished the term of my Nazirus, but I need to observe additional time for the sake of hair growth. It's a very, very interesting dynamic. So the Rosh says, all right, fine, so let's go. So therefore, nitma biyom gidul seir. So I'll say, so now let's say I've observed the term of my neder nazirus, but now I have to observe another 30 days in order to allow for what? For hair growth. And now I become tameh at the end of those 30 days. So we'll say, so now what's the status? Rav Amar Eino Soser. Rav says, interesting, I have not demolished, right? I have not in any way negated the days of my Nazirus. Why? I feel Rabbi Yochanan Amar Soser, Hani Mili Hechi Dekai Benazirus. Gidul Seyar Mashlim Nazirusu. Rabbi said, this is incredible. Rav says, essentially, I've finished my Neder Nazirus. Right? The only reason I need to observe these additional days, Rabbi say, is not for my Neder Nazirus. It's for what? It's for what? For hair growth. So Rav essentially says, the window of the Nazirus has closed. I've observed it. This is hair growth. If you become tameh on your hair growth days, Rav says, halacha l'maisa, it does not go ahead and destroy the Neder Nazirus. And Rav goes so far to say that even Rabbi Yochanan would agree. Even Rabbi Yochanan would agree with this. So Shmuel says soser. Shmuel says no. In fact, you do lose the days of Nazirus. Why? I feel Reish Lakish Tamar in soser. Even Reish Lakish, who says that normally, again, the becoming tameh only goes ahead and ruins the current period in which you are currently situated. Hastam shtei Nazirus. That's because, again, in the previous cases, you're dealing with two different periods of Nazirus. Hacha chad Nazir. Here, it is one period of Nazirus. One period of Nazirus. Incredible. So I'll say machlokes. So I'll say we're going to see by the way that the halacha actually is that if you become tameh during the additional days of hair growth, it actually does not demolish your neder nazirus. But again, we're going to see that case in greater specificity. Next. Amarav Chista, Kol Modim, everyone agrees. Shim Kiddush Seyar Bedam Ein Lo Takana. So we'll say another very interesting case. What's the case over here? So we'll say if you take a look at the rush again, so we'll say this is now 3, 6, 8 lines are from the bottom in the rush. So Hakol Modim Shim Kiddush Seyar Bedam Ein Lo Takana. Hakol Modim Rabbi Shmuel Depligi Benitma Biyom Gidul Seyar She'em Kiddush Seir B'dam Kilomar Shenizrak Dam Karbonosov. Well, so here's the case. Guy is at the end of his Neder Nazirus, right? The blood of his Nazirite offerings has already been sprinkled, right? Ba'od Seir HaKadosh Tainu Kodem Gilua Kidesiv V'Kiddush Roshav Yamahu D'Gidul Seir Mikri Kiddusha Ein Lo Takana K'sas Shlo Yuchal Galech. So we'll say, listen to this. So everyone agrees. We're going to see what this case means in just a moment. Everyone agrees that what? Shim Kiddush Seir B'dam Ein Lo Takana. That ultimately, again, that halacha l'maisa, if he became tameh on the day that his karbonos for Nazirus were offered, but he did not yet cut his hair, that he has no remedy. I will say, what does that mean? He has no remedy. So the Gemara says, Ali b'deman. Whose opinion are you talking about? If it's Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Eliezer holds that we'll see this. The cutting of the hair of the Nazir is an indispensable part of the Nazirite process. If that's the case, Toch Molosi, then I will say, then it's still considered to be that he's in the midst of his Nazirite vow, and therefore what? Becoming tameh before he cuts his hair should actually what? Destroy the entire Neder Nazirus. Ella libid Rabbanon. Rather, it must be according to the Rabbanon, because what do the Rabbanon say? Ha'amri taglachas lo ma'akeves. Rabbi say the Rabbanon hold that in general, hair cutting is not ma'akev, right? They hold that hair cutting is not ma'akev in general. To which the Gemara says, the olam aliba derabanan. In reality, Rabbi say it's according to the Rabbanon. Umay ein lo takana. Rabbi say, what does it mean that there is no remedy? Ein lo takana lemitzvahs kiluach. Ultimately, Rabbi say he's lost out on the mitzvah of hair cutting. So we will see this. It's a technicality that he's lost out on the mitzvah, ultimately, again, of hair cutting, but the Nazirus itself comes to a close. Again, we'll see that case in greater specificity later on. Nazir shekalu lo yamav. So we'll say, if a Nazir has finished his neder Nazirus, loke ala tuma ve'ina loke ala his galachas. Well, it's a very interesting case. Watch this. You have a Nazir, we'll say, who has finished the term of his Nazirus. This sure is it. So now he's done. But what? He has not yet done his concluding sacrificial rites and services. So this is actually very interesting. So the Gemara says over here, Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina says that halakha, if he becomes tamei, he gets malchus for tumah, but yet if you were to cut his hair, he would not get malchus for violation of his neder nazirus, nor would he get malchus for drinking wine. Why is it that he gets malchus ultimately again for becoming tamei? The Amar Kra, Kol Yemei Haziru LaHashem, because the pasuk says all the days that he is a nazir for Hashem, l'rabos yomim shela'achar melos ki yomim shelifnei melos. So we'll say that lashon of Kol Yemei tells me that what? That the days after he concludes his neder, but before he brings his official sacrificial rites, are just like the days during his neder. And just like the days during his neder he can't become tamei, so to the days afterwards he can't become tamei as well. If that's the case, he should be chayv for hair cutting as well. After all, again, the Ha'amar Rahman of the pasuk says, Kol Yemei neder tar lo yavra al rosho. So we'll say same lotion of Kol Yemei, all the days. Should make the days during his neder like the days after his neder, days after his neder like the days before his neder. Visu, furthermore, Kol Yemei nizro mikol asher yaseh migefan hayayin. But furthermore, the pasuk says all the days of his nazirus talks about wine. We both say same lashon of Kol Yemei. That should teach me that what? The days after the completion of the neder should be like the days before the neder. So we'll say, so what's going on over here? Halacha l'maisa, we're saying that when it comes to tumah, that the days after you complete the neder nazirus like the days before because of Kol Yemei. But if that's the case, lashon of Kol Yemei is by every other thing as well. To which the Gemara says, top of Tezvav, Shaini Hachad Amrachmana, Vitame Rosh Nizro. They will say the pasuk by Tumah says, literally again, Tame, he'll be Vitame Rosh Nizro. He'll become Tame Rosh. What does that mean? Mi Shenizro Talui Lo Birosho. They will say it means that someone who's Nazirus is literally again Talui, dependent on his head. What does this mean? Take a look at Rashi. Tap Rashi. Gabi Tumah Taima Mahu Deloke. Why is Rabbi say that even after you finish the duration of your Nazirus, if you become Tamei, you're going to get Malchus? T'chsev v'tamei rosh nizro. Mi shenizro taloi leberosho, demashma shetala kasav esatuma b'mei shadayin lo niskaleach. Rabbi say the Torah hinges the Tumah upon who? Someone who did not yet get his haircut. As long as you did not get your haircut, even if what? You have finished the days already, you are still subject to the prohibition of Tumah. And if you become tamei, you may not lose your days, but you will get malchus. You will get lashes. Absolutely incredible. Kozman shelo gilach saro shenizro arosho. The tamei rosh nizro. Mi shenizro talei barosho. So I will say that's halacha l'maisa. If after the duration of the nazir, so you've finished your neder nazirus, but you have not yet done your concluding ritual rites, so halacha l'maisa you become tamei, you're going to be chayiv for that. But if you drink wine, you're not chayiv. You get a haircut, you're not chayiv. So meisvei nazir shekalo yamav legalech v'lishtos. So yom is shekalo yamav. So I say nazir who's finished his term. Asur legalech. He's not allowed to cut his hair, but he's not allowed to drink wine and become tamei l'meisim. Ve'im gilach v'shasayim v'nitma l'meisim harei zesofik es harbaim. Aye. But if he does get a haircut, he does drink wine, he does become tamei meis, he gets malchus. So we'll say it sounds like from this brayso over here that even after you've finished the actual duration of your neder nazirus, halacha l'maisa, you're still chayiv for becoming tamei. drinking wine and getting a haircut, tiyufta. Einachinami, this refutes what we just said before. I will say that is indeed the halacha. That even once you finish the actual duration of your neder nazirus, halacha l'maisa, you are still chayiv. Ultimately, again, if you drink wine, become tamei tumas meis, or ultimately get a haircut. I will say, shkoyach. All right, Chevron Zoom. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you, Sev, you know what I realized?